Thanks for making it back. Thank you for finding us in the multidimensional time stream. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the phenomenon of entity attachment, some of my own observations about it, and just kind of defining, clearing up, and giving you guys a little bit of actionable intel that you can use in your own awakening journey to understand more clearly when we have been affected by an outside energy. What is that actually like? And so let's go ahead and jump right in. For those of you guys that saw our most recent video about, what is energy clearing, what is that process like, you may have noticed one of the things that I intentionally left out of that video was a deeper explanation of the phenomenon of entity attachment. And so as a person that works professionally in helping people rid the human system of these energies, I think I've built a little bit of a definition over the years. And so let's go ahead and define that. For all intents and purposes, the terms entity attachment refer to the process of mental, spiritual, emotional, and sometimes physical oppression that takes place at any stage of the human journey at the hands of what we might call the forces of darkness. Now, depending on your culture of origin or your current understanding of the spirit realm, these forces of darkness can come in many different forms. It can be anything from the biblical demons to archons, to jinn, to negative extraterrestrial greys, to, of course, everyone's favorite Draco reptilians, and a host of many, many other things, depending on, who you follow on YouTube. That could also be a very, very different, collection of beings or circumstances or energies. So you're going to insert some of your own terminology in there as well. But from my understanding, when we're talking about entity attachment, we're talking about the process by which these negative energetic manifestations attach and connect themselves to humans on the earth plane existing in physical bodies. And so let's talk a little bit more about how that works and look at one of the slides from our most recent workshop, which you guys can download right now for those of you guys that want to go deeper into your own path of understanding the way energy works, for those of you guys that are learning to become healers, for those of you guys that are maybe you're already working in the energetic realm. Maybe you're already an intuitive and you're trying to understand on a deeper level, or maybe you're brand new. You're just coming into this. Maybe you're trying to understand your own experiences and what happened to you. We do have courses available. You can head over to our website at rememberyourmission.com. And we have our most recent course, the Psychic Defense and Awareness Workshop, available right now for those of you guys that want to go into this on a much deeper level. We take part in energy clearings in each session and just talk a lot more about what we're getting in here today. And so what do we look out for when it comes to entity and spirit attachment? Well, signs of entity attachment can vary greatly on many different levels. In many cases, these signs can mimic or appear as extreme emotional or mental disorders. Doesn't mean that every emotional or mental disorder we encounter in the human journey isn't somehow, indicative of an entity attachment. Not necessarily. But in some cases, it definitely can be something that we need to look into. The important thing to remember is that each person will experience this phenomenon a bit differently based upon personal history, family of origin, childhood programming, unhealed trauma. The list goes on and on and on. But here's just a few of the things that you can look out for in your own life, in the lives of others, things that you're going to observe in your behaviors and other people's behaviors that can give you some clues to look for when you're trying to understand, is this just my own darkness, my own trauma, or is this something outside of me? And so what do we look for? Number one, shared generational maladies and family of origin, things like long-running cycles of alcoholism, addiction, destructive emotional behaviors, cycles of physical or sexual abuse that persist or are passed on along a family or bloodline. Those are probably one of the number one ways in which generational entities, and when I talk about entities, I don't always mean a sentient being. In many cases, what we're talking about is a form of parasitic infestation that is passed like an infection from family member to family member. And what they do is actually influence our behaviors, our desires. And it doesn't mean that's always what it is. It's not always just something as simple as a parasitic interaction within the body. There are many, many different sentient beings that constantly interact with us on the lower astral plane. And one of the ways in which they root themselves into our energy field is through these cycles of destruction. We also look for things like sleep paralysis, traumatic out-of-body experiences, night terrors, in some cases, extraterrestrial abductions. Not that that's always what that dream or that experience represents, but these are ways in which entities or beings that inhabit the lower astral planes will attach themselves to our field. Another way in which we encounter this energy, probably one of the most common ones, one of the most shame-inducing ones, one of the ones that people will often seek help for after many years of silent phantom oppression, are succubus and incubus experiences. I do believe this is one of the most common ways in which entities root themselves into our field. And for those of you guys that aren't aware or don't already know, succubus or incubus energies are oftentimes anything from a parasitic being to an actual sentient entity whose purpose is to extract highly activated sexual energy from the body. It can come in many different forms. In some cases, it can even take the form of people you know and elicit an out-of-body or dream body sexual experience with the express purpose of draining your body of that energy. It can be highly problematic, very, very difficult, and it can lead us to many, many different states of disconnection from intimacy, from ourselves. It can change the ways in which we interact in relationships. Man, all kinds of strange things. And so other things we might look out for are, classic things like hearing voices, whispers, breathing sounds when alone. Doesn't mean that when you encounter such things that you're encountering, non-human entities or beings within your space. I'll be real, those are relatively rare, but they are things that come along with conditions that can be caused by negative entities such as schizoaffective disorders, bipolar mania, a host of many what we might call mental illnesses are, in a lot of cases affected by, exacerbated by, could be caused by negative entities. And so we also look for wild mood swings, a really, really big one, bizarre behaviors while intoxicated. You'll notice some people will have a very distinct Jekyll and Hyde type of personality. As soon as alcohol or drugs are induced, they become a very, very different person. You'll see it in the eyes. You'll hear the voice change. In some cases, it's like a whole other spirit walks in. Doesn't mean that every single time we engage in such behaviors, we allow ourselves to become possessed by negative energies. Not necessarily. But as you notice the intricacy of bizarre behaviors around people when intoxicated, it's one of the things that's going to show itself when there's another energy attached to the field, when there's something else going on with that individual. The influences and the mannerisms and the signals that it sends into the body are going to be much more pronounced. And so look at the way we behave when intoxicated in any form. These are just things to look out for in your own life. And then you might also notice sudden onset of what might appear to be mental disorders, things like obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar mania, schizoaffective disorders, psychosis. In some cases, drug-induced psychosis will be caused by the energy field being just dramatically open due to, drug behaviors, and certain entities or beings will kind of insert themselves in your field with a glove-like effect and just continue that process. It just kind of fills the auric field and people just keep doing it. And so in some cases, as that goes on and on and on, an entity can and will root itself within the layers of a host body to the extent that it can completely inhabit the individual, leading to separation from the higher self and total control by the invading consciousness. Now, I'm going to be real with you. I do believe this is a lot more common than people talk about, but I do also believe it is also probably one of the most highly misunderstood terms. But this is often when true possession begins. It is important to note, though, there are many different subtle levels of this type of interaction, and it's not always going to be that you're going to be completely taken over by some entity within your field. In most cases, we're going to be influenced. And so I think that's one of the most important things to mention here today is that, when we are encountering negative beings, it is oftentimes because we are giving some form of authorization. There's been some type of interaction. We will be making some form of a behavior in this life that will leave ourselves spiritually open on some level to these negative forces. The question is, what are they though? And that's where it becomes very individual for each person. I think it's important to mention that for some people, just your own unhealed energy, the trauma energy that exists within your body, the thought forms that fester within your mind's eye, in many cases, these will be the greatest bait for negative energies. The sad truth is the primary method through which a lot of these negative energies will attach themselves to our lives is going to be through the manipulation of our thought forms, vices, addictions, our behaviors more than anything else. So when you're looking for guidance on what to treat in your life, if you're looking to rid yourself of the foothold that can be, that negative entities can grab onto in your body, we need to look at our hidden darkness. We need to look at our addictions. We need to look at the things that we rely on, the things that keep us stagnated. And, it's not always going to be a drug or alcohol. In some cases, these are belief systems that we hold on to that we have to be honestly willing to look at. I do believe that for most of us that do experience true entity attachment, or those that do come in contact with true darkness in this life, I believe it is part of a contract that we sign. And, at the same time, I think there are also many circumstances in which these are random occurrences. It doesn't mean that every single thing that occurs is something that we agree to, but I do believe that by and large, when we do have notable or long-term experiences with such energies, I do believe it is part of a contract that we will sign or undergo in this human life cycle. And I do believe that one of the reasons for that in many cases is because there are a lot of practitioners, there's a lot of mystics, there's a lot of spiritual warriors, there's highly powerful, highly gifted empaths that, will come in oppressed by such energies for the sole purpose of keeping you limited, for the sole purpose of keeping you small, for the sole purpose of keeping you stuck in your cycles of detachment, cycles of destruction, in your addictions, in your vices, in the cycles of abuse that we endure in this life. And so for those of us that really want to do work on ridding ourselves of these energies, we have to rid ourselves of what we call the bait frequency. And this is a thing that I have observed after several years of doing this work. People will come in with certain belief systems or ideas or stories that they have, grabbed onto about, the nature of what their trauma is. And in most cases, it's not that that's not what it is. It's that our body or the mind's eye will allow whatever that trauma is to take that form. And so we have to be constantly revising our understandings. We have to be constantly gaining new information. And for those that want to create what we might call, and this is a bit of a haphazard term, but, a sensation or an environment, or to cultivate this kind of bulletproof energy field, there is one thing you can do, and that is Qigong. And if it's not Qigong, it can be yoga. And if it's not yoga, it's going to be some form of cultivation of the energy body, because that's one of the things I don't see get, taught too often within our spiritual community. Everyone wants to, name our attackers. They want to talk about who's doing this. They want to, completely, repeat and restate over and over and over again a lot of the terms and the understandings that many of us already know about. A lot of you guys that are finding this video have already heard of this very same set of criteria, or you've encountered it in your own way. What we are not often taught is what do we need to do to get these energies out of our life. And so what I've learned over the past few years is the most effective way is to cut it off at the source. And depending on what you're going through, for each and every one of us, there will be some form of trauma or unhealed energy within your energy field that will give these beings or these parasites, these ETs, whatever it is, something to grab onto. So we heal the childhood self, we heal the adult self, we heal our heart, we heal the emotional body, we detox the physical body, which is also one of the other things we don't hear mentioned too often. We rid ourselves of toxic heavy metals. We stop subjecting ourselves to, medical treatments at the hand of big pharma. We start noticing the level to which, those treatments are actually keeping us in the state of disconnection, in a state of, dampening of the human energy body. And so we could go on and on, but we're not going to. What we need to know about the phenomenon of entity and spirit attachment is that, number one, it is absolutely real. There are a host of many forces, within the lower astral plane. In some cases, they're actual humans here on the earth plane that will oppress us in many of the same ways as we experience astrally. One thing we do know, and we incarnate into a world in which we make an agreement to exist alongside such things. As we learn to keep the energy body clear, as we learn to cultivate our spirit, as we learn to cultivate the vital life force within us, we learn to create an environment in which these energies cannot interact with us in the way that they did in the past. And so you will be your own greatest defense against these energies. But for those that, have gone through this for a long time, for those that are new, for those that are just coming into this, maybe you've been beaten down, maybe you've been worn down, maybe you cannot go on a day longer. That's where people like me come in. For those of you guys that want further information about this, for those of you guys that would like to book a session, for those of you guys that want to take part in our training programs or the work that we do on a regular basis to help people stay clear, to help develop your own natural, real intuitive abilities, you can find us over at rememberyourmission.com.